What about almond flour? This is a question that came through the direct messages. My name is Malcolm Saunders, creative visionary of Lightseller, helping you find and learn how to craft your own food and medicine. And yeah, I'm going to be opening up a new series of videos here where we're taking your questions, things that people ask that, if you're asking it, someone else is thinking it too. So I'll be kind of pulling some questions that we get from our email. You can reach us directly through lightseller.ca, as well as through Instagram, YouTube, all the different ways. We receive them, I hear them, and love to answer about that. And this one here, this question is kind of in general, at least my answer is going to be more generally about nuts, seeds, grains, beans. Had a conversation with somebody about who's like so stoked about beans and heirloom beans, and yeah, wants to kind of see them play a greater role, importance in people's food, their diet. Would Lightseller carry them, so on and so forth. And equally on the other side, you've got people who are moving away from nuts and seeds, in particular seed oils. And you might be yourself wondering, okay, where should I be on this spectrum? And diet is individual, and I know it gets tough to navigate when you hear opposing views, conflicting opinions, and how do you find the truth for yourself? One of the things that really anchors me, really grounds me, is traditional foods. How did ancient cultures all around the world, what were traditional foods, traditional diets? What did they include? There are kind of grand visions of what is, perfect, what is optimal. Not every culture, due to circumstance, was able to eat their optimal diet. They had to work with what was available. And that's why you got into things like fermentation, because, let's face it, as humans, we're opportunistic. And in an ideal world, yes, we've got, the most perfect food available to us year round in an unlimited quantity, but that has not always been our experience as individuals. Definitely, certainly not as cultures. We live in a unique time in this moment, in this day and age, where we do get to choose. We have this ability. If you got the money, if you got, the knowledge, know-how, you can really dial in and customize your diet. And that's a wonderful, beautiful thing if it's available to you. Traditionally, yes, people had to work with what they could. So maybe, meat was ideal, but there was a scarcity of animals and the ability to produce that. There's the seasons, there's all these factors, transportation, you name it. And looking at traditional diets gives us a really good foundation. So when it came to nuts and seeds, when it came to grains, when it came to beans, yes, many cultures around the world consumed these foods. In fact, relied on them as staple foods in their diet. But here's what they did. They soaked, they sprouted, they fermented, they roasted. They had to process them to make them more digestible. These nuts, seeds, grains, beans, they have anti-nutrients that are, well, they're anti-nutrients to us, but they're protective mechanisms for the plant, because the whole purpose of those nuts, seeds, greens is to create life, for their procreation. Things like phytic acid binding onto minerals. So the idea of, simulating that kind of soaking, sprouting, is it's in that growth phase. It's like plants like, okay, I can release that. I'm in that stage, that phase of my life. I'm going to absorb the nutrients. I'm going to put all my energy. That's why a lot of people, even in the little kind of micro health cultures, have focused on things like sprouting. Yeah, so great. Almonds, might be in your diet, might not be in your diet. If they are, I would say look to soaking, sprouting, fermenting, roasting, taking care of some of those things like phytic acid or the oxalates, right? So there was processing involved to help make them more digestible and more nutrient, positive versus negative, especially when it came to things like minerals, as I mentioned. So yeah, it's context, right? And looking to ancient traditional cultures, how did they process and consume their food to make it the most optimal? And ultimately, it's up to you, right? What works for you? It's really hard to kind of sort through and navigate, again, the conflicting opinions, the contrasting views, and everyone's at different stages of their life and perspectives on diet. I mean, I have so many conversations every day, and my goal is trying to help meet people where they're at. I'm not here to say you got to eat this or not eat that. What we do at Light Cellar is we want to optimize, those foods that many people do consume, that do enjoy. So if we're going to work with nuts and seeds, we're working with them in a soaked, sprouted, fermented way. And we are consuming traditional oils. We're focusing on things like olive oil, things like butter, things like ghee, things like tallow, versus, kind of more newer industrial foods like a lot of the seeds oils. Like you will never find canola oil in this store, in our products, anywhere. Our chef Alex, he is a culinary genius with the absolute highest of standards and ideals when it comes to the ingredients he uses, and, for his own nutrition. So, one of the reasons he loves working here is because every other place he's ever worked, he's always had to kind of lower his standards. Even at some of the best restaurants around, there's kind of this vision, this ideals, but hey, when the rubber hits the road, it's like, well, like this oil, like nobody's asking, nobody's really caring or holding them to that high of a standard, and it's easier to kind of cut the corners, do things, one way versus what is the ideal way. And that's who we are, that's what we do. And we focus on foods that have a long history, a cultural use, cultural reverence. I was chatting with a man here, he's from India. He actually might even be joining the team at Light Cellar. He was talking about, in his culture, moringa. He's like, we call it the miracle tree. And I'm like, yes, I know. Like that to me is exciting, right? A culture that has a food, be it a plant or an animal. And in this case, it's obviously a plant. It's a tree like coconut, where they call it the tree of life or the miracle tree, right? It is so embedded in their culture. They know how valuable it is, every single part of it being so nutritious and valuable, that it is so highly esteemed. It gets called the tree of life or the miracle tree. In the case of, say, coconut, moringa, mesquite, there's reference after reference where that is a cultural staple food, and they prepared it in a certain way and got so much benefit from it. So anyways, I'll cover off some more kind of questions as they come through. Feel free, send us a DM, send us an email. And like I say, if you're thinking it, if you got a question, I'm sure other people will as well. So you'll see me kind of pop on here and answer these questions. So thanks for tuning in and being part of Light Cellar community.